And this is an interesting one. It's a bit of a heavy one. Yo, Ariel, apologies if this is long, but I'm really interested in your take. Firstly, as someone passionate about journalism, I'm curious about your thoughts on Barry Weiss's spiking the 60 Minutes story on CECOT, CECOCT. What does this say about the state of the profession right now? And relatedly, am I off in feeling like there's a lack of focus from traditional MMA media on the sports washing being done via the UFC from the current Trump administration? It feels like the general sentiment is to accept and ignore it, but personally, I feel like that abandons the people in the crosshairs of this government's xenophobic policies and rhetoric, i.e., immigrants, trans community, etc. With the White House card on the horizon, should more MMA journalists be discussing, investigating, and reporting on this? Sorry if this is a bummer of a question, but I'm genuinely interested in your perspective on the role of journalism here. Okay, obviously these are two very different topics. Let's start with the second one first because it pertains to MMA. And I'm curious to get everyone else's thoughts on this. Do we feel like the White House card in particular falls under the umbrella of sports washing?
Yes.
You guys know what sports washing is, right?
Yeah.
Everyone knows you use sport to wash your reputation, to make it better, to kind of like hide things.
But the whole connection, the UFC's connection to Donald Trump is
Okay, so that's why I specifically mentioned the White House event. Now, we could talk about him campaigning, him on the election trail, and I think that's kind of a different thing. Do we feel like that event in particular is a form of sports washing? Or is it unfair to separate them and it should all be lumped together, and is it all sports washing? Because I'll say this, I do feel, I don't know if sports washing is the best term for it, but I do think that Donald Trump used the UFC as a platform to get his message across, or even to, to connect with younger voters. And the UFC was very happy to take part, and they had him showing up with these elaborate walkouts. None of this was coincidental. The very first time Dana White was asked about it, he was like, oh yeah, that was just a coincidence. It was obviously not a coincidence. That was a bold-faced lie. And so he used that in the process. Remember when he got out of jail? The first public appearance was at a UFC event. So I believe that was a form of sport washing, if you will. I just don't know if the actual White House event is a form of it. Obviously, the UFC is going to take part. It's a huge deal for them. It's a massive undertaking. It's a crown jewel event in their fight calendar and all that stuff. But at this point, I don't know. I
don't think the two things can be separated. I don't think you can isolate one thing. In fact, one of the tenets of the sport washing is hosting events like this to distract from human right records and things like that. Like, this is the argument that everybody makes when talking about Saudi Arabia is like, yes, they're hosting this fantastic event. The point of it is to distract you from other things that are going on. So I don't think you can separate them. But I understand where what you're getting to, which is like, this is the president, like, as an example, would like when the president or the White House invites a sports team as a tradition, a championship sports team to the White House, is that considered? I think there is some kind of like ambiguity, there is some grayness, but this in particular does feel to me like part of a sports washing initiative.
Yeah, I mean, the walkouts was like, I agree with you, Ariel. It was like a strategic campaign strategy by his whole team to be at these events, get to his base, get closer to them, garner favor to get more votes. This, I don't know. To me, it feels like an event that they want to have for the America 250 celebration, which is going to be a massive deal here. I mean, just in Times Square, as soon as the ball dropped, they like re-racked it with the America 250 logo, and they're going to do a big ball drop on July 4th now in honor of that. So it feels like this is an event that's part of that, and he obviously has close ties to Dana White. And it just felt like, let's add this on. How crazy would that be if we did that for the anniversary?
Can I suggest that that's how it's supposed to feel? That's when sports washing in action
is this changing my mind on anything?
No, but the point, the way you do the sports washing is by distracting from the other things, right? If we all go, wow, it's a massive event. They did it at the White House while these other things are going on. That is the definition of it. That is how it gets executed.
I guess I'll say, Pete, why don't you weigh in?
Well, I just there's a concern I have, and I think I've said it to you. I think I've said it to Rick before. And it's like, right, so Trump's popularity and the popularity of his politics seems to be like a response to people thinking that things are too woke, or things went too soft, or whatever. And you see that taking a knock in popularity or whatever. Like politics is cyclical. Like nothing lasts forever. Trump will inevitably be very unpopular. Maybe he is now. I'm not keeping up with polls and anything like that. But the UFC has linked itself so closely to Trump and this regime that I feel like that's something I'm very concerned about when it does get to that stage. When it's like people are looking back kind of like we do at Affliction t-shirts now. We're like, oh shit, remember people like them? I'm afraid that the UFC, and because the UFC has monopolized the sport of MMA, it's all going to just be like a thing that people look at back and go, oh, remember people like that sport? Like that is my concern for the UFC tying itself so close to Trump. We're not there yet, but I think I've said this to you before. Like that is my big concern for the UFC tying itself so closely to any political regime. It just so happens to be Trump now.
So I understand what you're saying. And when you have him walk out when he's campaigning, when he's not the president, when you have him walk out, that is you tying yourself to that candidate, right? They could say all they want. We do the same thing for someone else. No, they wouldn't. Let's be honest. And it wouldn't be that overt, that blatant, and that many times over and over and over again. And then, of course, all the shots on camera and all the fighters coming up to him and like they went out of their way. And of course, Dana White speaking on his behalf at the conventions and whatnot. Then I'll view this and say, regardless of who is in office, let's say Biden was in office or Kamala Harris, and she said, hey, I have a great idea. Let's have an event at the White House. I feel like they would have done it regardless. Do you understand what I'm saying? I feel like because before Trump, as you said, any sports team would have accepted the invitation regardless of who's in office, regardless of their politics. It only was once Trump came in and he was so polarizing and he was, so divisive that people started to say no. And then, now it seems like more are just saying yes and it's becoming more of the norm. And so I feel like regardless of who, like if it was Clinton, if it was Bush, over time, not everyone has been 100% in favor of a president, but like once the White House is intact, you're invited, you go. And so if you're invited to put on an event, you go. And so I can understand what this gentleman is saying as far as like, okay, their relationship. And also, let's not forget, there's actual ice commercials during UFC events. Like there's definitely something there if you want to talk about it being used as a form of sport washing. I just don't know if the White House event is being, because I sort of view the America 250 celebration as a celebration of America. And I know that he's the president. I know he's going to take all the honors. And I know some might say, Ariel, you're being naive right now. But to me, I view it as a celebration of America. He'll be gone in 3 years and the country will move on. I don't think he'll go for another term. I just don't see that happening again. Maybe I'm proven wrong. So I just kind of feel like this is a part of the celebration. And of course, the UFC, an entity that was not, that was illegal in the state of New York 10 years ago. Who would have thought in 2016 that they'd have the opportunity to do an event? Of course, they're going to take that opportunity. It's huge for them. It's being talked about. It's going to be watched by millions of people. So it's a complex one for sure. There's no doubt no sports entity has ever tied itself, at least not in like our lifetimes, to a specific president who just so happens to be such a polarizing one, quite like the UFC has. There's no doubt. And you can make the case that there is no sporting organization that is as political right now as the UFC, right? Like the ice commercials and, the appearances by Trump. It just doesn't happen. You know what I mean? Like I just feel like if baseball had the opportunity to do a game at the White House, they would take it. They wouldn't say like, no, that's too political for us.
But the problem is all of this stuff happened beforehand.
Yeah.
Like it's, you can't just separate them and go like, this is happening because of this. Like, look at what's happening with the Revival Act. Like it seems to be political favors happening here.
Yep.
Like, it's very
now,
hard
but is that sport washing?
Well, here's my question.
It's not sport washing, but it's part of
the
environment they've created with this relationship.
It's bouillabaisse.
Totally agree with Pete. You can't separate the two, but you're also coming at it from the perspective of the organization, right? If I am the MLB, if I'm the NFL, if I'm somebody else, I would say yes to that opportunity.
Yeah.
The point is not would they say yes. The point is the administration doing this in an effort to sports wash. The motivation is not from the league side, right? I agree with you that I think nearly every league would take that opportunity, but is the administration doing this in an effort to distract from other things, right? It's couched in 250 celebration, all these other things that I think are reasonable, expected, and something we would have assumed would happen. But it is also happening at a time of turmoil. It is also happening at a time where there's a lot of unrest in the country. And so this is an opportunity to kind of, hey, look at this great thing we're providing. And I think this is kind of like the definition of sports washing from a administration perspective, not necessarily from like, should UFC turn it down? Should MLB turn it down? Should NFL turn it down if offered the opportunity? I think they would all probably say yes, but the administration is the one executing their strategy, not the other way around.
Sports washing is a very real thing. There's no doubt about it. And I do believe that there's like a little bit of like a reputational wash that happened as well. I don't know what the right answer is. There's an article in the Washington Post from December 31st, which talks about the marketing strategy of the current regime. The quote is, "The spending would help President Donald Trump's mass deportation agenda dominate media networks and recruitment channels, including through ads targeting people who have attended UFC fights, listened to patriotic podcasts, or shown an interest in guns and tactical gear," according to a 30-page document distributed among officials this summer detailing ICE's surge hiring marketing strategy, quote unquote. So, there's obviously something there. And if you want to say, I've seen some people say like the UFC fighting at the White House is disgusting. I don't feel that way. I don't feel like it's disgusting. What was that?
I don't either.
I don't think it's disgusting. If you despise the current regime, if you despise Donald Trump, you might feel like, hey, yeah, this is too close for comfort. But I'm probably thinking that you thought that a long time ago. And I've seen some people, there are a lot of fans, and I know there's, some media members, Luke Thomas probably being the most prominent one, who are very open and talking about this, and certainly have like I would say like a Democratic left POV who are very critical of this. And I think that it's all very healthy to have these conversations. I think it's part of the job. It's healthy. I'm not offended by the White House event. I did think that the Trump stuff was way too much in the campaign. Like, you want to do it once, hey, he's sitting there, fine. I get it. You have a history, you have a relationship. The elaborate walkouts and all that, I still to this day can't believe ESPN was okay with it. Still to this day. I made my feelings, known on election day, but still, I think that there are certain things that should be kept separate. And it was just a lot. It was a lot. So very interesting. As far as the second question.
But one more thing I just want to say one more thing on the first, which is the question kind of presupposed that like nobody's really talking about this. You just highlighted the fact that like Luke Thomas as one example, there are people talking about it. But
we've talked about it too.
It would be an unrealistic expectation for it to be the focus of every single conversation, but I don't think it has gone unsaid. I don't think there's anybody, and we are now in fact talking about it right here, so I don't think it has gone unsaid. I don't think it will be this like non-issue. I don't think everybody stays quiet on it, but I also think it would be unrealistic for every conversation to have that caveat or to lead with that part of the conversation. So I don't know.
I think we've talked about it a bunch in many different shapes.
It's also happening in every sport in the world right now.
That's
like it's happening. It's happening all over the place. You're talking about Formula One, boxing, obviously in combat sports, soccer. Like they're buying World Cups. That's what's happening here. And I know the next one's in the US. Saudi Arabia's having one. Qatar's had one. Like this is not a combat sports issue. I think the barrier for entry is a lot lower in combat sports. We've seen Kadyrov. Things like that.
Yeah. I think what makes it unique, PT, is that we've never quite seen this happen in the US. You know what I mean?
That is, but I will say, like, from an outside of the US perspective, this was always sports washing. I just don't think people were aware of it. Because it was so new.
Yeah.
I don't think people were aware
because it was the US. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Maybe because the radar wasn't up. Speaking of the White House event, there is a tweet here from one Conor McGregor saying, fun times, Dana White in UFC. He's talking about the Floyd Conor buildup that world tour that they went on. Floyd Mayweather, when you are ready for that promised MMA bout, I am here. The White House is nice in the summer, I heard. Just kidding, Mike. Although I could fight both on the same night. Floyd, MMA, easy, 10 seconds. And a lot of people are speaking about this. Greater chance of Conor fighting Floyd rather than Conor fighting Mike? Do you guys think that happened?
No, Conor fighting Mike, much more likely.
I do wonder, like, when the story is told, how involved the White House will be in the making of this card. Like, because Donald Trump, I could see him being like, yeah, I like that. I feel like they're going to be somewhat involved.
Yeah.
Well, we saw John Anik come out, and I forget the outlet, forgive me.
I think it was the Jackson podcast.
Oh, okay, there you go. Shout out Rampage.
He wasn't on that one.
Oh, he wasn't?
No.
Who was on it? Just the Bear guy?
It was the Bear guy and Michael Bisping and Anik.
Okay, shout out to that triumvirate. But John Anik saying 6 or 7 title fights. I can't imagine that the UFC was dying to. Wow, look at Pizzi. Hip.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that the UFC was dying to do that because that would probably realistically kill the second half of their schedule. And you have to imagine that there's some requests being made at a White House level for this to be spectacular. If the White House makes the offer, I imagine that they're going to have some say.
Is this a jump the shark moment?
I'm opening.
What is?
Why you got to put me on?
This is what the people want, right?
Okay.
Pop one more button. Let's see what's really going on.
We're going to see you without the button anyway.
Pop one
This
more.
is after a few Reddicks or whatever they're called.
Can I get a Rickards? Can I get a Rickards?
The Rickards.
You know what I should have done?
Where's
20
that
on
Funk
pump
Harbor? Where's that Funk Harbor at?
I should have done like one of these. No, it doesn't quite work when it's like, you know, when it like comes down both. Does anyone know how to tie
Don't
a?
you need a real bow tie for
Yeah,
that?
that's what I mean. It doesn't work with Does anyone know how to tie one?
Nope.
No.
Nah,
look at
that's a pull up the YouTube. That's a pull up the YouTube.
Was that me?
When you're doing,
Okay, I don't
you're
want.
in an Obad Elliott mode right now.
I don't
You're
want
like,
this gentleman to think that I was skipping the first question, and it is about Barry Weiss spiking.
I have no
Sorry,
idea
sorry,
about
sorry,
this.
sorry.
I don't know what this is.
Barry Weiss used to work for the New York Times, I do believe. Then she left. I think she was high ranking over there, maybe editor-in-chief, left and started something called the Free Press, which gained a lot of popularity. And then she was hired late. Well, actually, she wasn't hired. The new Paramount Plus regime, the Ellison family, which we've heard a lot about, I believe they bought the Free Press and brought her over as the executive editor of sorts of CBS News. I feel like Jordan knows a lot about this. Did I get all this right, Jordan, or did I mess this up?
Yeah, no, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Free Press, now CBS News. Yeah, you nailed it.
But they bought it, right? They bought her, I
believe so. They bought her website, whatever, and then, yes, they installed her as editor-in-chief of CBS News, much to apparently the chagrin of people at CBS News.
Okay, and there was a story that was going to air on 60 Minutes, obviously, you know, the pillar of news journalism, I would say, broadcast news. Been around forever here in the United States. Actually, it was about Venezuela, right? It was about...
It was about immigrants being put into detention centers.
Yes,
including Venezuelans.
And Venezuela, and then at the 11th hour, the story did not air. Her statement, I'm paraphrasing all of this. Her statement was like she felt like there were still some reporting holes that needed to be filled, but in a crazy twist, it aired in Canada. They didn't pull the plug on it there, some way, somehow. And then that got posted online and everything spread. And the insinuation was, given her politics, she is right wing, and given her relationship with the White House, she pulled it because it made them look unfavorable. Would that be a fair way of describing all of this?
Yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up. She said there were holes in the reporting that they didn't feel like were correct. And then, you know,
and the correspondent
Sharon Alfonsi said, which is pretty rare for 60 Minutes correspondents to speak on decisions. And I think the previous editor-in-chief of 60 Minutes had resigned because he didn't like how Barry Weiss was getting involved in their editorial decisions, which had really not happened before for 60 Minutes.
Yes, and I think the correspondent sent an email to the crew or to the team, and that email got published. I don't know if she posted it on her own. Nevertheless, yeah, it was a huge deal, and there's been some decisions that have been scrutinized since she came over because she's never really been in this position per se, like a broadcast executive editor. Look, I'll be 1,000% honest with you guys. I am a fan of Barry Weiss. I'm very much a one issue kind of guy. You know how I feel about the Middle East. You know how I feel about the state of Israel. You know how I feel about its right to defend itself, and obviously its right to exist. And I think that when she was working at the Free Press, she was one of the very few media members who was actually telling the truth about what was going on over there. And so I appreciated that. As far as her coming over to the CBS Paramount world, we're starting to see that it's not that easy. It's not that easy. There are a lot of different barriers that you have to consider, that you have to overcome. There are a lot of different opinions, and ultimately you have to do what's best for the entity. CBS News, to me, is the most, even though it may not be what it once was, that is the home of Walter Cronkite. Walter Cronkite was the anchor of the CBS News. And I've talked about Walter Cronkite. Walter Cronkite, to me, is the most trusted news anchor of all time. He was dubbed the most trusted man in America at one time. He was known as Uncle Walter. When he said it, when he reported that John F. Kennedy was shot, the world believed it. And it was a time where there was no, obviously, internet, social media, any of those things, right? I mean, it was like the embryonic stages of TV and media back then. And so there's a tremendous legacy and reputation to uphold, and there are people right now who don't believe and don't feel like she is upholding that. It would be reckless of me to go too deep into all of that because honestly, I don't follow it that closely. I'm obviously aware of the stories and I like this type of stuff. I will say, as I just said before, I'm very passionate about the Middle East and the state of Israel and all that, and I'm passionate about what I believe is to be misreporting regarding that. And very biased reporting. But I will also say, more so than anything, is the fact that I do believe that media should be unbiased. And so if it is in fact true that a country, Israel, any country, did something wrong, yes, that should be reported. And there should be no bias and the facts should be reported. If there's a story that is not up to snuff, then it should not come to light. Who the hell am I to say if a story was, fully reported, vetted, because I wasn't there in the trenches? But if it is in fact true that there is bias seeping into her decision making, yeah, that's a big problem. That's a huge, huge problem. There should be no bias. There should be no emotional attachment. There should be no relationship attachment to anything. You should be there to report on the news, report on the truth, and you should be there to report on, the facts to the people without any bias. And it drives me crazy that I couldn't go on ESPN back in the day and say I hope Conor McGregor beats Khabib Nurmagomedov. I would get called out if I said that. But yet you go on news, whether it's political news, cable news, broadcast news, and you see bias all the time and no one has a problem with it. In fact, people accept it. I don't understand why news, which is way more important than sports news, why does news get treated differently than sports news? I know there's opinion shows in sports, but if someone was watching SportsCenter and, an anchor, SportsCenter, a cable news program on a cable news network, and the anchor said, yeah, the Bills are playing the Jets, and I hope that the Jets lose this game because they suck and they don't deserve to win, and I hope the Bills smash them, blah, blah, blah. We see the equivalent of that on cable news networks every single day. And if someone said that on ESPN, they'd be lambasted for it. I'm not talking about a pundit. I'm talking about the anchor. And yet you see it in political news. I don't understand that. I don't understand why you can't go. Do you guys feel like there is one outlet that gives it to you straight? No bias. I think the New York Times is biased. I think the Washington Post is biased. I think Fox is biased. I think CBS is biased. I think ABC is biased. I think they're all biased in some way, shape, or form. You can tell me right now, we can play the game. They're left, they're right, they're left. Who's down the middle? I don't know.
It is very hard to find. To the point you're making, it did feel like in a previous era, in a previous time, that it was different. But I imagine that was just, there were more stringent standards in terms of making sure not to cross those lines. And now, everything goes. Everybody's just allowed to say whatever they want.
This gentleman is right, though. I love this stuff. I love journalism, and I don't I don't understand people like we've joked. Frank and I have joked about like Megyn Kelly and all this stuff. She's biased too. They're all biased, and I don't like that. I don't want echo chambers. Give it to me straight, without bias. Stop.
I don't think you're in the majority though.
I don't get that.
People want the echo chamber.
Why? I don't get that.
Because it supports their own belief system, and they want to feel that.
It's so dangerous. It's so unhealthy.
It's happening in Ireland now as well. It's, you know what I mean? It's crazy.
People don't want to hear other people telling them they're wrong, right?
Give me the news.
Yeah, but if the news says you're wrong, then
you
have to confront that.
Nottingham Forest.
Yeah. Oh wait, we scored?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, thank you. Most importantly. Thank God. Can we win this damn game? 69.
By the way, just on the specific piece, which I've seen, like, I feel like the cover-up was worse than the crime, if I'm being honest. Like,
they should have just aired it?
It was a harrowing piece, and like it revealed some atrocities that were happening. But like, I don't think people are unaware of most of those. Like, I think it was, pretty well reported already, some of these things that were happening, and the cover-up ended up magnifying it in a way that.
Well, I guess the thinking was, or maybe the accusation is, she didn't want to air it because it would make them look bad.
Yeah, and in the end, the cover-up made it look significantly worse. Yeah.
Fascinating. I saw the new anchor of the CBS News evening news come out and say, like, there's not going to be any bias here, and everyone was going crazy over that. It could do your head in. It could really do your head in. If someone out there knows of a down the middle, unbiased, they tell it to you like it is, as it's supposed to be. If you know of that outlet or show, please let me know.
I can't wait for everybody to see their. Oh yeah, there you go.
Well, no, I mean in politics, but yes.
Oh, sorry.
You know what? Not even in politics.
That came to mind.
In the world, like, because I sometimes I feel like humanity is in politics. Not everything is politics. In the world, can you just give it to me straight? Thanks for watching this video. Before you go, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for us. Also, give us a thumbs up, leave a nice comment. These things go a long way. And while you're here, do check out the rest of the channel. We've got live shows and full interviews, clips, and a whole lot more. We're doing big things here, and we appreciate your support very much.